Since the dawn of civilization, a silent question has echoed in the minds of those who dare to look beyond the surface. Why has knowledge always been veiled, divided, and hidden? Why, generation after generation, have only a select few had access to the core of universal truths, while the majority has been left at the mercy of disjointed fragments? This isn't merely a historical curiosity. It strikes at the heart of an existential dilemma. Knowledge, when fragmented, loses its power to liberate. When whole, it illuminates. Over the centuries, spiritual elites, priests, emperors, philosophers, and secret organizations have constructed a global system that keeps essential knowledge concealed beneath layers of carefully crafted distractions, dogmas, and social structures. This system is the true, invisible force operating behind the scenes of history. Most of humanity has been kept in a state of managed ignorance. This doesn't mean a complete lack of knowledge, but rather a deliberate limitation on what is allowed to be understood. The veil that separates common knowledge from esoteric understanding is woven from silence, fear, and convenience. It is this very veil that shapes the destinies of entire cultures. The history we've been taught is merely the surface. Beneath it, a subterranean current pulses with truths that have never been revealed to the general public. The question many avoid asking is, who benefits from this division? And more importantly, why does it persist even today, in an era seemingly overflowing with information? The global initiatory system is neither a fantasy nor a conspiracy myth. It is real, ancient, and functional, found in traditions such as the Eleusinian mysteries, Kabbalah, Vedic teachings, Egyptian rituals, and the wisdom schools of ancient China and Mesoamerica. It operates through levels. At each stage, the initiate gains access to a deeper layer of understanding. But why this tiered structure? Because true knowledge, knowledge that transforms the self, requires preparation, maturity, and an inner readiness to confront truths that challenge the ego, morality, and even identity. This knowledge cannot be force-fed. It must be revealed at the right time, much like a seed that needs fertile soil and the right season to sprout. This right timing, however, has been hijacked. The framework that was meant to foster the evolution of the soul has been repurposed for control. Instead of guiding humanity towards expansion, it has begun to limit its ascent. Rather than opening doors to inner worlds, it has erected walls of separation. Thus, for millennia, the true purpose of existence has been obscured by narratives of power, obedience, and dependency. The inner freedom that should have been nurtured from an early age has been exchanged for systems that train minds to conform rather than to liberate themselves. Modern institutions are often disguised heirs to this ancient model. Schools frequently don't educate, they condition. Religion, in many contexts, doesn't enlighten, it imposes. The media doesn't inform, it manipulates. Everything seems designed to keep humanity distracted from the essential question, who am I beyond what I've been taught? The true initiatory system, on the other hand, centers around this question. It doesn't provide ready-made answers, but offers tools for each individual to discover the vastness within themselves, and this journey of self-discovery is precisely what the old world fears. The division of knowledge has always been a tool of power. In every civilization, those who controlled knowledge shaped the narrative, and those who shaped the narrative determined the fate of the people. The scribes of Egypt held secrets that the common folk could never read. Taoist masters accessed layers of reality that a peasant could scarcely imagine. Pythagorean philosophers spoke of sacred numbers that were not merely mathematics, but keys to deeper understanding. Thus, generation after generation, access to profound knowledge remained confined to exclusive circles, almost always male, elitist, and restrictive. Those few who dared to break this silence were often persecuted, ridiculed, or eliminated. The global initiation system has always run parallel to official history. Its symbols are etched into cathedrals, monuments, ancient manuscripts, and even contemporary films. Yet, to the untrained eye, they appear merely as decorations. The initiated, however, see beyond the surface. They understand that everything conveys a message, that the world is, in essence, a vast symbolic landscape. Reality exists in layers, and what seems like objective reality is merely the outermost layer of an infinite tapestry of meanings. This is why knowledge has been compartmentalized, to prevent ordinary people from discovering that they are far more than they believe themselves to be. But this system isn't just an external structure. It also operates internally within each individual. Every human carries within them the gates of the temple, the keys to the mysteries, and the paths to awakening. True initiation is, at its core, an inner journey. However, for this journey to take place, one must have the courage to cross the veil, the courage to deconstruct everything that has been learned without question, the courage to let go of the comfort of ignorance in exchange for the unsettling nature of truth. Most people fear this process because it is radical, it changes everything, but that's precisely why it is liberating. The first step to unlocking this ancestral knowledge is to acknowledge its existence. Furthermore, it's essential to accept that it has been deliberately hidden. This isn't an invitation to paranoia, but rather a call to responsibility. The conscious seeker doesn't get lost in conspiracy theories. Instead, they pursue the essence, the truth that lies beyond words. They understand that the visible world is just the tip of the iceberg. The real journey isn't outward, but inward. The global initiatory system reveals itself only to those who are ready to look beyond the surface and dive deep into the soul of existence. Denying the existence of this structure keeps you trapped in an illusion, but recognizing it is just the beginning. The real challenge lies in navigating through it. This is where many people give up. It's not enough to read books, watch videos, or join groups. You must transform your very being, purify your intentions, reflect on every action, question every belief, and above all, quiet the mental chatter to hear the voice that whispers long-forgotten truths. This voice is that of the higher self. It guides the seeker from stage to stage, revealing not only the secrets of the universe but also the true nature of the soul. This path isn't reserved for a select few. Contrary to what ancient orders may have suggested, sacred knowledge belongs to everyone. However, it can only be accessed by those willing to shed their illusions. The modern world offers shortcuts and empty promises, but the true initiatory system demands discipline, commitment, and patience. That's why it remains the road less traveled, yet the most transformative. Once someone truly decides to cross the veil, there's no turning back. Because after witnessing the truth, no lie can ever feel comfortable again. The global initiatory system isn't fading away. It's coming to light. In times of crisis and collapse, ancient wisdom emerges from the shadows to guide a new humanity. Those who are awakening to these truths today are reviving a forgotten lineage of seekers, mystics, and sages. This lineage isn't defined by titles, but by presence, coherence, and quiet wisdom. These are the true initiates of the new era. What binds them together isn't affiliation with an order, but a personal commitment to live the truth, no matter the cost. Before the dust of time obscured the visible records, there existed civilizations that possessed a profound understanding of the mysteries of the cosmos and the human soul. Long before writing as we know it, and well before the empires recognized by official history, there were centers of knowledge so advanced that their spiritual and material technologies still challenge modern comprehension. One such origin point, often dismissed as legend yet resonating across various traditions and cultures worldwide, is Atlantis. Not as a literary myth, but as a real civilization that had a level of awareness and harmony with the natural laws far beyond our current understanding. The Atlanteans didn't just accumulate knowledge, they lived it, embodying it. Wisdom was woven into their daily lives, aligned with the rhythms of the earth, the vibrations of the cosmos, and the subtle energy of the spirit. Atlantis was not just an advanced society, it was the birthplace of an initiatory lineage that would shape the entire course of human history. When it fell, due to internal corruption, energetic imbalance, and the distorted use of its capabilities, not only did a land sink, but an entire way of life was dismantled. Nevertheless, its survivors carried fragments of this knowledge to other lands, where it would be reinterpreted, preserved, and adapted. This is how the first post-Atlantean initiatory schools emerged in the deserts of Egypt, the plains of Mesopotamia, and the forests of ancient India. Each of these centers became a guardian of a piece of the whole, safeguarding symbols, practices, and languages that would later be codified into future religions, myths, and philosophies. In Egypt, this legacy took on a tangible form in the mystery schools, such as those associated with Isis, Osiris, Thoth, and the priests of Heliopolis. These temples were not merely places of worship, they were spiritual universities. Every room, every column, every hieroglyph served a didactic and symbolic purpose. The initiate didn't just learn, they underwent a transformation. They faced symbolic trials that activated dormant areas of their consciousness, refined their perception, and connected their being to higher dimensions of existence. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for instance, was not a tomb, but a vibrational elevation machine, a precisely designed structure intended to induce elevated states of consciousness through sacred geometry, resonance, and the Earth's magnetism. Contrary to the modern belief that knowledge evolves in a linear fashion, ancient initiates understood that wisdom is cyclical. It emerges, flourishes, is hidden, and then rediscovered. For this reason, knowledge was always passed down in layers. The common people received the outer myths and rituals, while the initiates accessed the deeper meanings, often concealed within the same symbols. Behind each god lay a universal principle, and behind every story, a key to decoding reality. This educational model divided knowledge into exoteric for the public and esoteric for the prepared. This was not an arbitrary exclusivity. It was an acknowledgement of the power that true knowledge holds. Just like electricity, which can illuminate a home or devastate a city, cosmic wisdom can only be entrusted to those who have purified their hearts and tamed their egos. The symbolic language developed during this period became universal. The Eye of Horus, for instance, is not just a graphic icon. It represents the mathematical mapping of brain areas linked to the pineal gland and the activation of higher perception. The Ankh, or cross ansata, symbolizes the union of the divine masculine and feminine, serving as the key to eternal life. Each symbol had multiple layers of meaning: literal, allegorical, moral, and anagogical, a model of interpretation later preserved by alchemists and Christian mystics. Nothing was left to chance. Architecture, colors, sounds, and gestures all adhered to precise cosmic laws. Wisdom was not fragmented but unified, integrating body, mind, spirit, and the universe into a single, vibrant worldview. Egyptian initiations required intense preparation. Aspirants underwent fasting, meditation, isolation, and both physical and psychological trials. They navigated dark corridors symbolizing the symbolic death of the ego, confronting their fears projected in induced visions. Only after overcoming these internal challenges were they led to the light, a spiritual rebirth. This process was profoundly transformative and often took years. There was no rush, as the goal was not merely to inform, but to transmute the being. That's why initiation was not a theatrical rite, but a genuine journey between two states of consciousness. Many of the great sages of antiquity passed through these schools. Pythagoras studied in Egypt for over 20 years before founding his own school in Greece. In his writings, Plato mentions Atlantis and acknowledges Egypt as the source of ancient knowledge. According to Kabbalistic traditions, Moses was also initiated in the Egyptian schools. These figures didn't create knowledge, they inherited it and adapted it to the languages of their time. This illustrates that the initiatory tradition is a continuous lineage, spanning continents and centuries, always adjusting to the level of human consciousness in each era while maintaining the same core, the awakening of the self. This lineage, however, has always faced resistance. Over the centuries, as power became concentrated in the hands of a few and fear replaced reverence, esoteric knowledge came under threat. Many temples were destroyed, manuscripts burned, and masters persecuted. Yet, like an everlasting flame, this knowledge endured, hidden within symbols, parables, and oral traditions, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And that moment always arrives. For truth, no matter how suppressed, is like a seed breaking through asphalt. It finds a way to blossom. When we examine the origins of the initiatory system, we realize that its structure was not designed to exclude, but rather to protect. It serves as a roadmap to guide humanity back to its divine essence. While its form may have evolved, its purpose remains the same, to lead the seeker toward inner liberation. Therefore, understanding its roots is more than just a historical exercise. It's an act of reconnecting with something that resonates within our own spiritual DNA. The tales of Atlantis and Egypt are not merely stories of the past, they reflect who we are and what we can become. What remains as the central teaching of these civilizations is that knowledge isn't merely information to be amassed, it's a frequency to be embodied. True wisdom isn't found in books, but in the silence between thoughts, in conscious breathing, in compassionate gestures, and in the gaze that pierces through the illusions of the world to see the divine spark in all things. This wisdom lives, breathes, and calls out. And though many may have forgotten, it has never been lost. It patiently awaits the awakening of those ready to remember. Initiation, in its purest form, isn't an external ritual. It's an internal transformation. It's not about impressing audiences or flaunting titles, but about awakening the invisible eyes of the soul and realigning one's being with the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. The masters of the past understood this well. They recognized that true power doesn't lie in thrones, weapons, or wealth, but in the ability to see beyond the visible, to touch the intangible, and to decipher the hidden codes that underpin reality. An initiate is someone who hasn't just learned something new, but has become something new. This process of becoming demands a symbolic death and rebirth, a voluntary letting go of illusion to embrace the real, even if it means walking alone through internal deserts that few dare to cross. The ancient masters from various traditions, whether in the Himalayas, the Egyptian schools, the deserts of the Middle East, Tibetan monasteries, or the forests of ancestral America, were not merely conveyors of knowledge. They were guardians of a specific frequency, a vibration, a particular field of consciousness. They understood that every true initiation transformed the human electromagnetic field, reconfiguring its subtle structures and awakening dormant centers of perception. Thus, they guided their disciples with great care, never rushing the process. The teachings were progressive, unfolding in stages, tailored to the disciples' maturity and their ability to hold the light that would be ignited. For true knowledge illuminates, but it also challenges, and only those strong in spirit can endure its fire. Real initiation has never been about memorization, it's about activation. It's about awakening centers of consciousness, glands, and subtle circuits that remain dormant in most people. Glands like the pineal and pituitary were not only studied from a physiological perspective, but were also recognized as gateways to other dimensions. Chakras were not just abstract, esoteric concepts. They were tangible realities that could be felt and precisely manipulated through breathing techniques, mantras, mudras, and meditative states. The masters understood that the body is a temple, a cosmic instrument. Initiation was, in part, about tuning that instrument, preparing it to resonate with the symphony of the divine. The initiatory progression followed a cosmic logic. Each stage was linked to an element, a planet, a virtue, and a trial. The novice began with the purification of the body and habits, followed by mastering emotions, controlling the mind, awakening intuition, and finally, integrating with the soul. Each level provided a key, and these keys were not mere metaphors. They represented tangible skills, extraordinary mental clarity, perception beyond linear time, the ability to heal with one's hands, to project consciousness, and to communicate with non-physical intelligences. Initiation was the art of unlocking the hidden potential of the human being, something that modern education fails to recognize. The masters also understood that true power is inseparable from responsibility. That's why an initiate was never given more than they could handle with integrity. Ethics were an integral part of the process. It wasn't just about accessing secret knowledge. It was about becoming worthy of it. Arrogance, vanity, and the desire for control were seen as poisons. Consequently, the ego was the first thing to be addressed. The rites of passage involved long periods of silence, solitude, fasting, and confronting one's own fears and shadows. An initiate who failed to face their inner darkness would be doomed to project it onto the world around them, corrupting knowledge and using it for selfish purposes. Many of these masters never left behind written records. Their teachings were shared orally, from heart to heart, soul to soul. They understood that words are limited and that true wisdom resonates at levels only silence can reach. Their lives were living testaments to what they taught: simplicity, compassion, strength, clarity, presence. They were beings whose aura inspired reverence, not out of fear, but in recognition of something sacred. They didn't create followers, they awakened conscious leaders. That's why their teachings continue to resonate today, even though many have tried to erase them. These masters understood that knowledge wasn't a human invention, but rather a discovery of what already exists, of the eternal truths. Because of this, they weren't dogmatic. Each disciple was encouraged to experiment, to verify for themselves, and to trust their own inner experience. There was no imposition of beliefs. Instead, there was guidance towards self-verification. This made initiation a path of liberation, not dependency. The master served as a bridge, not a destination. Their role was to guide until the disciple found the light within themselves and could walk on their own. And when that happened, a new master was born. Not by title, but through realization. This model stands in stark contrast to the power structures of the modern world. Today, knowledge is often wielded to manipulate, control, sell, and entertain. In contrast, initiation has never sought an audience or applause. Its aim was the invisible, the essential, what transforms a person from within. This distinction is crucial. The power that the masters sought was not about dominating others, but about mastering oneself. This self-mastery was the foundation for any action in the world. Without it, any knowledge can become dangerous. With it, even the simplest gesture takes on a sacred quality. The initiation process was not uniform. It varied depending on the culture, the era, and the level of consciousness of the civilization. However, the underlying principles remained consistent. The journey was an internal one, progress was based on spiritual merit, and transformation was inevitable. The disciple began as a human and emerged as something greater, a bridge between worlds, an emissary of light amidst darkness, a being no longer confined to the physical realm, but able to navigate between planes with awakened awareness. These were the true initiates, not those who possessed vast knowledge, but those who had become knowledge itself. The masters understood that all of humanity was destined for initiation, sooner or later. They knew that every soul, at some point in the evolutionary cycle, would have to pass through the fire of truth and shed its illusions. So, even when faced with persecution, they continued their work in silence, planting seeds, creating lineages, and leaving hidden maps in symbols, works of art, stories, and parables. They were aware that a time would come when these seeds would sprout, a time when hidden knowledge would rise to the surface, no longer a privilege for the few, but a legacy for all who were ready to embrace it. That time is drawing near. The call to initiation resonates now more powerfully than ever. For millennia, the truth hasn't just been hidden, it has been shattered, fragmented, and scattered into disjointed pieces so that it could never be recognized as a coherent whole. The initiatory system, originally designed as a path to integration, has, in the hands of powerful institutions, become a tool for division. The knowledge that was meant to connect humanity to its divine essence has been hijacked and used as an instrument of domination. What was once a profound inner journey has devolved into dogma, external cults, and empty rituals. From this distortion, the grand structures of organized religion in centralized states have built their foundations not on wisdom, but on controlling the narrative. Humanity, once the master of its own consciousness, has been shaped by doctrines that do not liberate, but instead imprison, fostering beliefs that discourage questioning and exalt blind obedience. The transition from esoteric knowledge to institutional manipulation began when spiritual power aligned itself with political authority. Priests became allies of kings, and temples shifted from being centers of inner transformation to extensions of the empire. Religion was transformed into the ideological arm of the state, which began to legislate not just over bodies, but over souls as well. Knowledge was divided into segments. One for the masses, simplified and dogmatic, another for the initiated, still preserved but kept secret. This division created an invisible hierarchy, where true knowledge was elevated above the masses, untouchable and unquestionable. The fragmentation was systematic. What was once holistic and integrative knowledge became classified, dissected, and compartmentalized, losing its vibrant essence in the process. Ancient myths, once rich with profound wisdom encoded in stories, have been reinterpreted as mere fables. Initiatory metaphors have been reduced to dogmatic facts. Symbolic rituals are now performed without any understanding of their true purpose. In this way, the essence has been stripped from the sacred, leaving only the shell behind. This shell, in turn, has become the object of worship. Symbols are now revered rather than deciphered. The priest has shifted from being a teacher to merely an authority figure. The temple, once a reflection of the soul, has transformed into a center of obedience. Gradually, the truth has been diluted into rigid interpretations, controlled by structures more interested in maintaining their influence than in awakening consciousness. The biggest trap of this fragmentation was the illusion of separation between humanity and the divine. Initiatory knowledge has always taught that the sacred resides within each individual, that the true temple is the body, and that contact with the eternal is direct and experiential. However, institutions imposed intermediaries, dogmas, rules, and fears, creating an artificial distance between the creature and the creator. Faith, which was once an internal trust in the divine presence, has turned into blind belief in imposed narratives. Meanwhile, questioning, once encouraged as a path to discovery, is now punished as heresy. Spirituality has been replaced by dogmatic religion, and knowledge has been reduced to catechism. With the rise of major monotheistic religions, control over people's beliefs became even more centralized. Sacred texts were edited, adapted, and translated with political and theological agendas in mind. Councils determined what constituted truth and what was heresy, not based on inner wisdom, but on power interests. Manuscripts were destroyed, libraries burned, and mystery schools banned. The initiated were persecuted, silenced, and labeled as witches, dangerous Gnostics, and threats to the established order. Yet paradoxically, this repression did not extinguish knowledge. It merely forced it underground. The esoteric tradition began to operate in secrecy, using hidden symbols and coded languages, waiting for the time when it could once again emerge into the light. Over time, fragmentation extended beyond the spiritual realm. Science, which originally emerged intertwined with philosophy and spirituality, also became separated. Knowledge began to be divided into faith and reason, spirit and matter, the visible and the invisible. The Cartesian paradigm, which profoundly influenced Western thought, dissected the human experience, mind separated from body, emotion from reason, and the individual from the cosmos. Knowledge was categorized, departmentalized, and dehumanized. Specialization took precedence over integration. Wisdom, which once unified all aspects of life, was replaced by technical expertise, cold analysis, and the dominance of logic over intuition. The modern state, rising from the ashes of the alliance between throne and altar, inherited the same desire for control. Now, the dominion extended beyond beliefs to encompass the very perception of reality. Media, education, and institutionalized science began to create a new kind of priesthood, this time secular, yet equally dogmatic. Fragmentation intensified. Individuals were conditioned to see themselves as separate, powerless entities, reliant on the system to interpret the world. Schools shifted from nurturing thinkers to shaping conformists. The autonomy of thought was replaced by rote memorization. Critical thinking gave way to passive acceptance. The initiatory system, which was meant to teach individuals to think clearly and feel deeply, was systematically dismantled. Throughout history, periods of intense control have often coincided with times of significant truth suppression. As knowledge became more fragmented, humanity drifted further away from its essence. The more we distanced ourselves, the more vulnerable we became to manipulation. Lacking internal references, people became easy targets for external narratives. This disconnection has led to a society that is sick, anxious, and lost. one that seeks meaning in distractions, fears silence, and has forgotten how to look within. The spiritual collapse of modernity is a direct result of this fragmentation of knowledge. That's why healing won't come from the outside, it must come from an internal reunification. Despite all this upheaval, the echoes of ancient wisdom have never completely faded away. They linger in the myths that still resonate with those who read them with an open heart, in the practices that have survived on the fringes, in indigenous traditions, in folk tales, in the subtext of ancient texts, in the symbols that adorn buildings and coins, and in the arts that touch the soul in ways that defy logical explanation. This fragmented truth remains alive, scattered like pieces of a puzzle waiting for someone willing to piece them together. Each fragment rediscovered is a step toward wholeness, and this journey is the true initiatory path of the modern age. It's essential to understand that the fragmentation of truth wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate plan, a plan designed to keep humanity unaware of its creative power, its divine nature, and its ability to transform reality through consciousness. But now the veil is beginning to tear. The connection between science and spirituality is re-emerging. Seekers are multiplying. The thirst for truth is growing. And with it comes the need to piece together what has been lost. Only with a unified, integrated, and embodied truth can we live fully, with purpose, and in the present moment. This is the initiation of a new era, not in ancient temples, but in the living temple of each awakened consciousness. In every era, culture, and civilization that has grasped the mysteries of the universe, a silent language has been employed to safeguard the most sacred knowledge, the language of symbols. When truth could no longer be spoken openly, when words became dangerous and doctrines were closely monitored, the wise of all times turned to symbols as vessels of timeless wisdom. They understood that symbols are the only language capable of transcending centuries, continents, and censorship without being destroyed, as they speak directly to the soul. While texts can be edited, burned, or rewritten, symbols remain hidden, disguised, waiting for eyes that can decipher their multiple layers of meaning. It is through these symbols that the initiatory tradition has endured, woven into stained glass, mandalas, temples, works of art, archetypes, fables, and monuments that have withstood the test of time. The symbol serves as a bridge between the visible and the invisible. It doesn't just convey information, it activates. It doesn't explain, it evokes. You don't need to understand it with your rational mind for it to fulfill its purpose. Simply encountering a sacred symbol is enough to trigger profound psychic and spiritual processes in the unconscious. This is because the symbol operates in the archetypal realm, where the original structure of the human psyche resides. It's like a key turning in a hidden lock within consciousness. It awakens memories, knowledge, and perceptions that have been dormant. That's why every true symbol has infinite layers of interpretation. It is alive. And as the observer's consciousness expands, it reveals even more meanings. The symbol is never static. It pulses with the vibration of those who contemplate it. In the initiatory tradition, symbols were used to encode spiritual truths, cosmic laws, and inner maps. The labyrinth, for instance, is more than just a design. It symbolizes the human journey toward the center of oneself, confronting one's own shadows, doubts, and illusions until rediscovering one's divine essence. The serpent, often misunderstood, represents vital energy, ancestral wisdom, and the force that rises through the spine, awakening spiritual power centers. The spiral signifies the infinite expansion of consciousness. Long before Christianity, the cross was already a solar symbol, representing the union of the earthly and the spiritual realms. The circle embodies wholeness, eternal return, and the divine that has neither beginning nor end. The masters understood that a linear mind could never grasp the vastness of reality. Instead of rigid doctrines, they offered symbolic maps. Each myth served as a coded parable. Every deity embodied facets of the human psyche and forces of the cosmos. Each ritual gesture mirrored universal laws, This symbolic language allowed knowledge to be shared without breaking the sacred silence that safeguarded its essence. It also provided protection for those who weren't ready, because those without the eyes to see perceive only empty forms. The symbol safeguards wisdom through its own depth. During times of intense religious and political repression, symbols became sanctuaries of hidden knowledge. Alchemists concealed their teachings within mysterious engravings filled with mythical creatures, natural elements, and anthropomorphic figures that, at first glance, appeared to be mere fantasies. Yet, each image held within it formulas for internal transformation, keys to awakening consciousness, and instructions for elevating the self. In Gothic cathedrals, stained glass and sculptures told a parallel esoteric theology alongside the official doctrine. Symbols were ubiquitous in tarot cards, Eastern mandalas, circular dances, and sacred chants, keeping the spark of universal wisdom alive. The symbol demands more than just intellectual interpretation. It invites contemplation, meditation, and receptive silence. One must descend from the mind to the heart, from reasoning to feeling. Symbolic understanding is inherently feminine in nature, intuitive, fluid, and receptive. This stands in stark contrast to modern Western education, which prioritizes logical and linear analysis. However, when one allows themselves to immerse in this language, something profound realigns within the self. The world begins to be seen as a vast, symbolic field. Nothing is random. Everything communicates. The universe reveals its structure like a living poem, and the seeker realizes that their own life is a moving symbol, an archetypal narrative unfolding through time. The initiatory schools taught their disciples how to read the world. It was a training in perception, interpreting dreams, understanding the signs of nature, recognizing numerical patterns, and noticing synchronicities. All of these were part of the journey toward symbolic literacy. Reality doesn't communicate in words, it speaks through symbols. When a person learns to listen to this language, they stop being a victim of chance and become a conscious participant in creation. They begin to engage with the mystery and walk in harmony with the invisible laws that govern everything. The symbol, therefore, is the gateway. Learning to recognize it is the first initiation. Ancient cultures did not see a separation between the symbolic and the real. The world was a vibrant expression of spiritual principles. The Egyptians recognized divine forces in every animal, star, and plant. The Celts created infinite knots not just as art, but as representations of eternity and the interconnectedness of all things. Hindus filled their temples with multifaceted images, each conveying profound teachings about the nature of the universe and existence. In all these traditions, symbols were not merely tools, they were the teachings themselves. This is why, even after millennia, these images still resonate within us. They speak to a part of our being that has never forgotten. With the march of modernity and the rise of rational thought, symbolic language has been dismissed, ridiculed, and treated as mere superstition or fantasy. Yet its power has never waned. It has simply been hidden, waiting for a new era. Today, amid the crisis of materialistic logic, many souls are beginning to rediscover the significance of symbols. They are re-emerging in dreams, visions, intuitions, and seemingly chance encounters. The collective soul is calling for reconnection, and symbols are the threads that can stitch the torn tapestry of human consciousness back together. The symbol is also a mirror. It doesn't just reflect the world, it reveals the inner state of the observer. This is why the same symbol can evoke different interpretations in each person and at various moments. It uncovers what one is ready to see. There isn't a single, fixed meaning, but rather a multitude that reflects the complexity of existence. When working with symbols, the seeker is also engaging in self-exploration. They are challenged to look beyond appearances, to develop subtle perception, and to refine their vision. Gradually, the world transforms into a sacred text, a living language where everything communicates, teaches, and reveals. On the initiatory journey, symbols serve as milestones along the path. They confirm, guide, and protect. When the seeker is ready, these symbols bloom like flowers, unveiling layers of meaning that were once hidden. A symbol can be contemplated for a lifetime, yet still reveal something new each time. It doesn't age, as it is linked to the eternal. The language of symbols is the language of the soul. This is why, despite all attempts to erase it, this language remains vibrant, present, and active, waiting for humanity to listen to it once more with reverence. Human consciousness is not a fixed, uniform, or linear entity. It is a living, expanding organism, a staircase with multiple steps, each level shaping how an individual perceives, feels, acts, and interprets reality. Just as a radio only picks up signals within its frequency, the mind can only see what it is prepared to perceive. Each level of consciousness serves as a different lens through which one views the world, others, and oneself. The initiatory system understood this long before modern psychology. That's why its entire framework of teachings is structured in layers, steps, and phases that mirror the various stages of inner growth. There are no shortcuts on this journey. Each level must be traversed, experienced, and transcended with effort, awareness, and commitment. Every transition is akin to a small death followed by a broader, clearer rebirth that aligns more closely with the spirit. Ancient traditions, such as Hermeticism, Vedanta, Buddhism, and Christian esoteric schools, have long acknowledged that human beings possess a multidimensional nature. We are not just bodies, we are also minds, emotions, souls, and spirits. Each of these dimensions expresses itself at different levels of consciousness. At the lower levels, perception is dominated by instincts, survival, fear, and reactivity. This is the realm of automatism, blind repetition, and unconsciousness. In this state, individuals live as prisoners of their senses and circumstances, reacting rather than making conscious choices. Everything is perceived as separate, threatening, and competitive. There is no room for reflection, only impulse. It is in this state that much of humanity still exists, operating under inherited conditioning and unconscious beliefs that shape their behavior without their awareness. As humanity begins to move beyond its primitive stage, it enters a realm where morality, order, rules, and systems shape its worldview. Here, a sense of identity starts to take form. The concepts of right and wrong emerge, along with a desire to belong to groups and seek external validation. Although this stage is more advanced, it remains tethered to duality. The mind engages in comparison, judgment, and categorization. Individuals define themselves in opposition. I am this, because I am not that. There is still a strong attachment to form, status, and recognition. However, it is at this level that the drive for exploration ignites. The soul begins to stir, asking questions and questioning ready-made answers. The first glimmers of true consciousness start to appear. With time and inner work, a person crosses another threshold and enters stages where consciousness becomes more fluid, inclusive, and less rigid. Here, they begin to realize that everything is interconnected. Opposites become complementary. Conflicts reveal themselves as teachers, and suffering transforms into a tool for growth. Compassion starts to blossom, listening deepens, and judgment gives way to understanding. Identity begins to detach from social roles, titles, and achievements. The search for meaning becomes more important than the pursuit of success. The soul starts to take the lead, while the ego gradually learns to serve. The individual recognizes that they are not separate from life. They are life itself in expression. At higher levels of awareness, consciousness begins to operate as a unified field. The notion of individuality dissolves, yet singularity remains intact. It's like a drop recognizing itself in the ocean while still being a drop. A state of perceptual unity emerges, where the rigid distinctions between subject and object, and between inner and outer, fade away. Linear time gives way to simultaneity. Intuition becomes the primary navigation tool. The being starts to access realms of reality that transcend the material. Here reside the great masters, the initiates, the wise, not because they know more, but because they are more. They embody an expanded consciousness in a stable manner, without fluctuation or fall. Their presence is a portal, their words are seeds, and their silence is revelation. Each level of consciousness comes with its own language, a set of symbols, and a specific way of learning. This is why the initiatory system is structured in layers. You can't present someone at an early stage with a truth that can only be understood at higher levels. It's not about elitism, but rather about respecting the pace of awakening. When the soul is ready, the truth reveals itself naturally. This is why ancient mysteries included tests, rituals, and stages. Each one prepared the disciple to receive the next revelation. And this revelation was not just an idea. It represented a complete transformation in how one is, perceives, and exists. The expansion of consciousness isn't automatic or inevitable. It requires consistent effort, self-observation, radical honesty, and surrender. It takes courage to let go of identities that have served us well for so long, but now hold us back. It also demands humility to acknowledge our own ignorance, to unlearn, and to start anew. The journey through different levels of consciousness is akin to climbing a mountain. It requires stamina, determination, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. Each summit reveals a new horizon, and each horizon presents fresh challenges. Yet over time, our perspective broadens, our breath deepens, and the journey becomes lighter. The initiatory tradition has never aimed to create dependency. On the contrary, it has always sought to cultivate autonomous, clear-minded individuals who are connected to their essential core. For this reason, teachings were tailored to the disciples' level of consciousness, honoring their maturity, pace, and capacity for integration. What was a symbol for one person could be a revelation for another. What served as a metaphor for one might be a reality for someone else. Thus, each person progressed from their own starting point, without haste, without comparison, and with reverence for the process. The journey was personal, but never solitary. Consciousness is a living network, and each awakening resonates throughout the entire web of being. Today, more than ever, it's crucial to understand the levels of consciousness. The collapsing world we observe is a direct result of our collective stagnation at lower stages of perception. Violence, alienation, consumerism, fear, and the destruction of nature. All of these are expressions of a fragmented and separated consciousness, still trapped in the denser layers of existence. Healing, therefore, won't come from external solutions, but from elevating our perception. As more individuals access higher levels of consciousness, reality begins to reorganize itself. New values emerge, new relationships form, and new structures are built. The world transforms as consciousness evolves. This change, however, cannot be forced. It needs to be cultivated, nurtured, and honored. That's why practices like meditation, contemplation, art, silence, and connecting with nature are so essential. They aren't just spiritual exercises, they're technologies for expansion. They align the psyche with the spirit, clear away the mental clutter that keeps us anchored to lower layers, and create space for the light of higher consciousness to shine through. In this context, initiation is the art of facilitating this ascent. It's the craft of guiding souls through the labyrinth of ignorance to the gateways of embodied wisdom. Understanding the levels of consciousness means recognizing that the journey isn't about accumulating information. It's about becoming someone who can perceive reality without the distortions of the ego, the projections of fear, or the filters of culture. It's about allowing yourself to fully inhabit the present with integrity, depth, and clarity. It's about shifting from a reactive existence to a creative life. Ultimately, it's about becoming a conscious channel for cosmic intelligence. This is the true goal of initiation, not to create scholars, but awakened, whole, and free beings. Because only an elevated consciousness can generate an elevated world. Initiation is often romanticized as a journey of light, wisdom, and transcendence, but the reality is that it requires navigating through dark, labyrinthine inner territories where the ego is confronted, unmasked, and ultimately dissolved. At this stage of the journey, the universal archetype known in nearly all spiritual traditions emerges, the guardian of the threshold. This figure isn't an external entity. Rather, it symbolizes everything that still binds a person to the lower layers of consciousness, unresolved fears, hidden traumas, unintegrated desires, rigid beliefs, social masks, and false identities. It represents the boundary between the old self and the new, between comfortable illusion and uncomfortable truth, between stagnation and a quantum leap. This is the point where many retreat. This is where most give up. The guardian of the threshold cannot be deceived, manipulated, or overlooked. He is the precise reflection of what needs to be transformed. His role is legitimate, necessary, and paradoxically, sacred. He does not hinder progress out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. Only those who have demonstrated, through their own practice, humility, discipline, courage, and inner sincerity, are worthy of crossing the threshold. This worthiness is not measured by accumulated knowledge, but by genuine transformation. Knowledge that is not embodied becomes a burden. Truth that is not lived turns into arrogance. Initiation is a purification process, and in this journey, everything false must die for the true to be born. This symbolic death is often painful, which is why few are able to move forward. Many embark on the initiatory path driven by curiosity, a desire for power, emotional need, or an escape from reality. However, these motivations crumble when faced with the Guardian. The Guardian unmasks intentions, lays bare motivations, and reveals weaknesses. Everything hidden beneath the veneer of spirituality is brought to light. In this moment, the seeker finds themselves stripped bare before their own eyes. No masks, no excuses, no illusions. They face a choice: to press on, even while feeling the pain within, or to retreat to old patterns, justifying their withdrawal with rational arguments. Yet the soul knows the truth. It understands that retreat is regression, that the shadow realm, no matter how terrifying it may seem, is the gateway to true freedom. This phase of the journey demands silence, introspection, and radical honesty. The ego, which has long been in control of life, begins to lose its grip. It fights back, creating sabotage, crises, and confusion. It relies on memories, guilt, fear, and anger, trying to reverse the process. Yet, the more the seeker struggles against the Guardian, the more they suffer. The only way to move through this is by embracing conscious surrender. This isn't about passive submission, it's an active commitment. It's a profound act of trust in one's own essence. A firm decision to no longer identify with the internal voices of fear. It's about refusing to obey the mental structures that uphold the old identity. At this point, the initiate stops being just a student of the path and becomes the path itself. The Guardian takes on many forms. For some, it manifests as a deep existential crisis where everything that once made sense loses its value. For others, it appears as sudden losses, breakups, illnesses, or loneliness. Then there are those who confront it in dreams, visions, or emotional outbursts that seem to come out of nowhere. Yet there is always a common thread: the collapse of the familiar, the deconstruction of the self, the breakdown of certainties, the pain of feeling disconnected from one's own essence, coupled with the possibility of returning to it. This paradox serves as the portal. Each seeker must cross it alone. Masters may point the way, but no one can make the journey for another. What makes the umbral so challenging is that it requires us to deconstruct the self we believe we are. All our notions of identity, worth, purpose, deservingness, and spirituality come into question. Everything that once felt sacred may now seem empty. What we thought was true can suddenly appear false. It's the realm of emptiness, the dark night of the soul, as mystics like St. John of the Cross have described. It's a state where no exit is in sight, where old maps no longer apply, and where logic falls short. In this liminal space, one is compelled to seek something beyond the mind, beyond emotion, beyond form. It's a deep dive into essence. And from this plunge, true initiation is born. The reason so few people make progress is simple. It requires letting go of the old self. And even symbolically dying is a daunting process. The ego fears disappearing. It prefers the familiar pain to the unknown freedom. It chooses the suffering it knows over the fullness it cannot control. As a result, it sets up subtle traps, spiritual justifications for not changing, elaborate excuses to stay in place, blame directed at the world, and constant distractions. All this is to avoid facing the shadow, but the soul is patient, it waits. Now and then, it creates situations that force this confrontation. Crises, losses, disappointments. These are often the soul's calls for us to confront what we have been avoiding. When someone finally crosses the threshold, something profound occurs. There are no fireworks, no applause, no external recognition. But inside, a new vibration settles in. A deeper center of gravity is accessed. The peace that emerges isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of meaning. The clarity that takes hold isn't mental certainty, it's a quiet knowing. The initiate understands that they have changed, even if the outside world doesn't notice. They no longer feel the need to prove anything. They are no longer at war with life. They begin to inhabit reality from a different place, a place of presence, coherence, and truth. The guardian of the threshold is, in fact, an aspect of one's own being. It embodies everything that has been denied, repressed, or hidden. Its role is to ensure that the true self remains inaccessible as long as there is identification with illusion. It protects the inner temple from desecration, and for this reason, it deserves respect. Rather than being viewed as an enemy, it should be recognized as a teacher. It reveals where there is still work to be done, where fragmentation persists, and where there is resistance to the light. By acknowledging this, the seeker transforms obstacles into gateways, fear into strength, and pain into wisdom. Few advance because few are willing to lose everything they think they are in order to discover who they truly are. Few can bear the weight of the necessary emptiness before real fulfillment can occur. Few are ready to confront their own depths without the promise of immediate reward. But those who cross the threshold become living sources of light. They become bridges between worlds. They become masters, not because they seek to teach, but because they embody what is possible when one walks through the fire with courage, and these few quietly support the collective awakening of humanity. We are living in a time of profound transition, a turning point in the history of human consciousness. The collapse of old structures, the rapid spread of information, the collective spiritual restlessness, and the disconnect between external technology and internal development reveal a silent yet urgent truth. The time for a new initiation has arrived. This initiation is no longer confined to hidden temples, secret orders, or distant masters. It is open, vibrant, and accessible to those who, with sincerity and courage, wish to awaken the dormant knowledge residing within their cells, their souls, their energy fields, and their ancestral memories. The new initiation does not require adherence to closed systems or submission to figures of authority. Instead, it calls for a radical dive into one's being, an unwavering commitment to inner truth, and a genuine willingness to let go of everything that no longer resonates with one's essence. Unlike past initiations, where knowledge was passed down through stages guided by external masters, today's call is for a conscious self-initiation. This doesn't imply a solitary journey. Rather, it signifies a return to spiritual autonomy. The wisdom is already within us, sealed in our hearts and the subtle layers of consciousness, waiting to be activated through direct experience, vibrational alignment, consistent practice, and inner listening. This knowledge can't simply be read in books or understood with the mind alone. It must be lived, felt, and embodied. It reveals itself as we purify, realign, and open ourselves. There is no external map that can replace the compass of intuition. No authority is greater than the inner voice connected to the source. The first step in activating this knowledge is recognizing your inner presence. Before seeking any techniques or tools, it's crucial to quiet your mind enough to listen to your own vibrational field. Observe the movements of your thoughts, feel your body's energy, and perceive emotions as messages rather than disturbances. Self-awareness is the gateway to all other levels of understanding. Getting to know yourself isn't a mental exercise. It's an act of mindful observation and continuous presence. Each impulse, every thought, and all repetitive patterns hold a key. Only those who commit to this honest and ongoing observation can piece together the scattered fragments of their consciousness and reintegrate them into a whole, awakened, and aligned being. The new initiation requires practices. But not just empty routines or mechanical rituals. We need vibrant, connected practices that resonate with the heart, not just the intellect. Deep meditation, conscious breathing, spiritual fasting, dream work, intuitive art, channeled writing, communion with nature, silent retreats, sacred dance, stargazing, symbolic study, contemplation of myths, spontaneous prayers, mantras that resonate in our bones, and soul-crafted rites of passage. All of these are pathways to access the subtler levels of consciousness and awaken our spiritual memory. What matters is not the form, but the intention and presence behind it. The practice should be a space for reconnecting with the sacred, an opening to the ineffable, a laboratory where the self is refined and aligned with the frequency of truth. As we awaken our dormant knowledge, we start to recognize signs that previously went unnoticed. Synchronicities become more pronounced, symbols gain clarity, dreams convey messages, and encounters feel orchestrated by an unseen intelligence. This isn't magic or superstition. It's life perceived through a more subtle, integrated consciousness. Reality unfolds as a constant reflection of our inner state. The outside world shifts from being an enemy or a prison to a field of learning and manifestation. The modern initiate realizes they are not at the mercy of chance, but are co-creators with the universe. They begin to live with purpose, attentiveness, surrender, and discernment. And this state of being is the essence of true knowledge. Activated knowledge doesn't make an individual superior to others. Rather, it fosters humility, compassion, and quietness. This understanding allows one to recognize that each person is on their own timeline, in their own process, and at their own frequency. Such a person does not impose, persuade, or compete. Instead, they witness, inspire, and embrace. This new initiation does not create gurus or followers. It dissolves illusory hierarchies and replaces them with communities of awakened souls, where everyone reflects and catalyzes one another. Here, learning is circular, wisdom is shared lightly, and service takes the place of ego. In this space, knowledge multiplies, truth resonates, and healing expands. Another essential aspect of activating knowledge is energetic work. Consciousness doesn't reside solely in the brain. It permeates the entire body, particularly the subtle energy centers, chakras, meridians, and auric fields. Clearing, balancing, and activating these centers is crucial for allowing inner wisdom to flow. Techniques such as Reiki, Kundalini Yoga, Qigong, holotropic breathing, sound baths, hands-on healing, and vibrational alignment are not just therapies. They are ancient technologies for energetic initiation. These practices unlock the flow of consciousness and enable the ancestral wisdom stored in our cells, bones, and spiritual memory to surface. The body becomes a finely tuned instrument, a living antenna that picks up information from the cosmic field. Nutrition, sleep, environments, words, thoughts, and even relationships all have a direct impact on the activation process. Knowledge doesn't thrive in chaos. It requires vibrational order, purity, and focus. This doesn't imply isolation or rigidity, but rather responsibility. The modern seeker understands that everything they consume, whether physically or energetically, shapes their field. They learn to protect their energy, cultivate sacred spaces, and maintain coherence between their thoughts, feelings, and actions. This coherence is the fertile ground where wisdom blossoms. Without it, any knowledge gained can be lost, distorted, or corrupted. Pure intention is the key to accessing the soul's internal library. Moreover, it's crucial to honor silence. Deep knowledge doesn't shout, doesn't compete, and doesn't flaunt itself. It reveals itself in the spaces between thoughts, in the pauses, and in attentive listening. Silence is the womb of wisdom. It's where the spirit whispers revelations, the heart aligns with truth, and the soul reconnects with its source. The modern world fears silence because it brings to the surface everything that has been suppressed. Yet it is precisely through this encounter with our shadows that light expands. The initiated learns to embrace silence, to seek out creative emptiness, and to resist the urge for immediate answers. They learn to wait, to mature, and to allow knowledge to emerge as the fruit of a living tree rather than as hurried information. dormant knowledge can also be awakened through the study of great masters, ancient traditions, sacred texts, and universal symbols. However, this study must be approached with an open heart, not just a mind eager to accumulate information. The initiate reads not merely to know, but to remember. They recognize in the sacred text a voice that resonates within them. They see in the myths a reflection of their own journey. They understand that the stories of gods, heroes, and sages are metaphors for the soul's quest for integration. By studying with reverence, they activate within themselves the same forces that drive these symbolic characters. In recognizing themselves in these tales, they awaken. The new initiation is not an end, it's a beginning. It's not a destination, but a turning point where one stops seeking externally and starts to blossom from within. It's a continuous, organic, and dynamic process. There's no certificate, no public acknowledgement, no external validation. Instead, there's a profound shift in perception, a reorganization of the self, a realignment with the soul's purpose. From that moment on, everything changes. Choices, connections, desires, and values. The initiated becomes a quiet agent of transformation, an invisible beacon that, simply by existing, raises the frequency of their surroundings. Their life becomes an offering, their path a prayer, and their being a bridge between worlds. We stand on the brink of a new era, not defined by dates on calendars or government decrees, but by a quiet and irreversible shift happening within the most sensitive, restless, and awakened minds. This is the time of revelation, not in the dramatic sense of an external apocalypse, but in its original meaning, to unveil. The veil that has shrouded direct access to profound knowledge for millennia is being torn away from the inside out, no longer by institutions, secret orders, or messianic figures, but by ordinary people who, weary of half-truths, choose to look within and remember what has always been. The wisdom of all ages is not lost. It is alive, whole, and quietly pulsing in every cell of your body, waiting to be activated by your awakened presence. Revelation isn't something that descends from the heavens like a thunderclap or an elusive mystical vision. It unfolds in the small insights that completely reshape our being. It's a moment of silence where we recognize the unity behind all forms, a compassionate gesture that dissolves years of pain, a deep breath that reconnects us with our inner core, a dream that delivers messages from the collective unconscious, a synchronicity that affirms a choice made from the heart. These moments are glimpses of eternal truth, fragments of the whole that, once recognized, can never be ignored. They shift our inner landscape, and in doing so, they transform our external reality. Ancient wisdom, passed down orally by shamans, recorded in hieroglyphs, chanted in mantras, illustrated in mandalas, encoded in alchemical symbols, and revered in myths and legends, was never meant for just one people, era, or culture. It is universal and timeless, embedded in the spiritual DNA of all humanity. Despite being distorted, persecuted, or hidden, it has never been destroyed. Because it lives within you, not as a mere idea, but as a vibrational field that can be accessed when you quiet the noise of conditioned thought and awaken the subtle perception of the soul. Revelation is not about discovering something new. It's about remembering what has always been available, yet few have dared to explore deeply. This new era calls for a new kind of human being, not a mythological hero or an unattainable saint, but a present, whole individual, aware of both their shadow and their light, willing to live authentically, even if it means swimming against the tide. The wisdom of the ancients no longer serves those who study it merely to feed their spiritual ego. It demands embodiment. It's not enough to know. One must be. It's not enough to repeat teachings. They must be vibrated, lived, and witnessed in everyday life. The initiate of the new era is not measured by how many books they've read, how many retreats they've attended, or how many techniques they master. Instead, it's about their ability to maintain clarity amidst chaos, to uphold peace in times of discord, and to look into another's eyes and see the same spark that burns within themselves. Revelation unfolds in layers, much like everything in the universe. As we deepen our inner listening, new truths come to light. What once seemed absolute is revealed to be relative. What was perceived as a limit transforms into a gateway, and what was seen as a loss becomes a liberation. This is the rhythm of true initiation, a constant unveiling, where each layer removed allows us to see with greater clarity, broader perspective, and deeper understanding. The wisdom of the soul is not rigid, it is vibrant and alive. It adapts, moves, and renews itself. It isn't fixed in dogmas, but flows like life itself because it is part of it. The initiate of the new era learns to ride this wave of fluidity, letting go of attachments to forms while recognizing the essence that resides within them all. The wisdom of all time is both a legacy and a calling. We inherit a heritage that resonates in our bones, in our words, and in our dreams. Yet, this inheritance only comes to life when we take on the responsibility of passing it on, not as mere copies, but as creative expressions. Each awakened individual becomes a point of light in the vibrational fabric of humanity. Every conscious action sends ripples that reach dimensions beyond what the rational mind can even grasp. Revelation is not an individual event. It is a collective awakening manifested through those who choose to live fully. These are beings who seek not applause, but coherence. They are driven not by fear, but by purpose. Knowledge no longer needs to be hidden. The very vibration of the earth is facilitating access to more subtle levels of consciousness. Ancient practices are being rediscovered. New spiritual languages are being channeled. Old traditions are being honored and adapted for a new era. And above all, there's a sense of urgency in the air. It feels like the time for willful ignorance has come to an end. There's no longer room to live in fragmentation or to pretend we don't know. Those who feel this calling are being urged to anchor truth in the material world, to walk as bridges between the invisible and the visible, and to become living examples of a new paradigm of existence. This era of revelation doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. It doesn't require knowing everything. It calls for the courage to keep learning. It doesn't ask for a renunciation of the world, but rather a new way of inhabiting it. It's time to bring the sacred into our daily lives, to make our breath a prayer, our gaze a temple, and our bodies an extension of our souls. It's time to remember that the true temple isn't built by human hands, but pulses in the heart of every living being. And the most powerful revelation isn't found in ancient texts, but in the silence that precedes words, in the pause between thoughts, in the inner space where the self and the universe meet. The initiate who navigates all the stages, confronts their fears, delves into the symbolic, recognizes the levels of consciousness, and surrenders to the guardian of the threshold does not reach the end of their journey. Instead, they arrive at its true beginning. They realize that the wisdom of ancient masters, oracles, temples, and sacred circles now lives within their own breath, presence, and awareness. They understand that there's no need to seek outside themselves anymore. They are the book, they are the temple, they are the revelation. With this awareness, they walk through the world not as someone extraordinary, but as one who remembers. There's no more time to postpone. The call is here. Knowledge is alive. The revelation is happening right now, at this very moment, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. It's time to awaken what has always been dormant, to live what has always been intuited, to finally be the conscious link between heaven and earth, between the past and the future, between what has been forgotten and what needs to be remembered. The final initiation is recognizing that everything you have sought so intensely already pulses within you. The wisdom of all ages is you. The truth is you. The revelation is you. Mind Unfettered, the floor is yours now. If this journey has resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear about it. What was the biggest veil that lifted for you today? Share in the comments what impacted you the most, or what dormant knowledge you feel is awakening within you. When you share, you manifest, and when we manifest together, we activate a new collective frequency. And now, it doesn't stop here. On your screen, the next step is already waiting for you. The Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map Jesus left for enlightenment. Dive into the secret map that Christ left for those seeking true soul ascension. Click, watch, and continue expanding with us. Mind Unfettered, because the truth cannot be shackled.